brought to you by BoardGameAtlas.com, the fastest growing board game community in the world. Kia ora koutou, and welcome to 20 great Steam games for board gamers. Now the reason I'm making this video is there's plenty of great games you can play that feel like board games on Steam. Now nothing really ever takes the place of face-to-face playing with people, but as we all know, that's not possible all the time. Sometimes you just want to play a board game, but there's no one that you can sit down and play it with. And your options are solo board gaming or playing a game on your computer. Now this video will only cover games that are available on the Steam platform, and it does not cover mobile phone apps or apps on the tablet. And the reason for that is doing them on the PC, it made it a lot easier for me to do video capture, so I can actually show you the games. If I'm doing this for phone apps, I can't actually show you the games without using someone else's footage. Now there's probably a very easy way I could get around that, but I'm not the most technically capable person. So bear with me as we explore 20 great games that you can find on Steam if you're a board gamer. So let's count down the list. Number 20 is Twilight Struggle, which many of you will know is one of my all-time favorite games. The reason I'm not going to this game in too much detail is I'm planning a full-length playthrough of this in the near future, and you'll be able to check out the game fully then. But needless to say, this is an exceptionally good app and a fantastic adaptation of the board game. So if you ever have wanted to try Twilight Struggle, do check it out. Number 19 is Tabletop Simulator. And Tabletop Sim is one of the best ways to be able to play a whole bunch of board games on your computer. There are some problems with Tabletop Simulator. It's a little counterintuitive and a little clunky, and some games do take an awful lot of setup. If we have a look at this version of the Alien Legendary deck building game, you can see all the decks there, but to assemble a game you've got to manually pull them all together and compile them, and that is a bit of effort. There are some games like this version of Star Wars Rebellion, where the people who've designed the mod have added in an element of automation, but still, Tabletop Simulator isn't immediately intuitive. Thankfully, there's some good people out there who've written some damn fine guides, and in the pinned comment for this video, I'm going to give you a link to one. It's by Manual Pancake, and it was posted on Reddit Board Games a day before I recorded this video, and is used with permission. And it's a fantastic guide called The Tabletop Simulator, a guide for self-isolators. So if you do want to give Tabletop Simulator a go, I really recommend going to that link, reading through there, and following the instructions. They'll cover in a lot more detail than I can in a short video. And paired with Tabletop Simulator, which is a very similar app that offers quite similar functionality. I've got very little experience with Tabletopia, but I know there's a lot of people out there who think this is one of the best places to play board games online. And if anyone's got a great guide for using Tabletopia, post it in the comments below and I'll add it to the pinned comment. Number 17 is Onirim. Now Onirim is a card game where you have a limited deck of cards that you draw through, and you're trying to unlock these doors, whether that's by creating a set of 3 colors in a row or using the keys to unlock them. Unfortunately, as you play through the game, bad cards happen, and you have to make some decisions about whether you're going to discard your hand, whether you're going to use one of your precious keys to remove the bad card, or whether you're going to burn 5 cards from your deck. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Onirim. I find it a little bit random and a little bit frustrating, but I know a lot of people who pass the time with this game, and it's very much like Solitaire, or Patience as we call it in New Zealand. One of those games where you just set up the cards, play through, and it's a little bit mindless, and it's a little bit of a time killer. The wonderful thing about Onirim is the core game is free to play, and you can pay for some of the expansions, but you can just go out, download Onirim, and play it. Number 16 is a game that would probably be higher if it was finished, and that's Gloom Haven. Now this game is still in early development, and it's got a lot of content still to come. But if you are jonesing to play Gloom Haven, there's enough there to keep you entertained right now. Not all the classes are there, not all the unlocks, but you can do these short campaigns. And it still has that core Gloom Haven gameplay of deciding which cards to play, which to burn, how to manage your risks, and all the wonderful hand management and risk management that goes into that game. And if you do buy the early access game, the game will keep getting developed for you. So you will see new content coming, new classes unlocking, and of course when it does get published, the full campaign mode will be unlocked. So I'd probably put this one way higher if it was done. But if you are hanging out for some Gloom Haven, this is probably your best option right now. And speaking of dungeon crawlers, this is Super Dungeon Explore. Now this is a dungeon crawler that's both cute and very tactical. The characters in the game are super chibi and the dialogue is very dinky and a little bit juvenile at times. And yes, I did name my dwarf Squatto, but the core gameplay is the usual dungeon crawler fare that people love. The classes are all quite specialized, you can give them upgrades through the campaign, and mostly you're just moving around your little bobbleheads and blowing stuff up. Now I've only got about halfway through the campaign of this because it actually gets really challenging. So if you do like Super Dungeon Explorer or you just like dungeon crawlers and want to play one, the game's pretty affordable and it has quite a high difficulty curve. And the dialogue is so cheesy. Number 14 is One Deck Dungeon. One Deck Dungeon was based on the premise of a dungeon crawler game based off one deck of cards, one deck of multi-use cards. And this is an incredibly faithful adaptation of the board game. There are different character classes you can play as, and as you go through the dungeon you come across multiple doors, and within each door there's an encounter. It could be a trap or it could be a monster that you have to fight. And the whole game is based around deciding whether you want to take on that risk or whether you want to take on a new challenge, and in managing dice to get the outcomes that you need. There's also a lot of skills, upgrades, and powers you can use in this game to manipulate the dice rolls, until finally at the bottom of the dungeon you come across a boss fight. And to make it in these boss fights you're going to have a lot of dice, a lot of skills, and use those abilities to cover up the numbers shown on the challenge in order to not take the effects that are unexposed. So in this example, this dragon would do a lot of damage to us and kill us if we didn't cover up these results, but by manipulating the dice rolls and adding the right dice in the right area, we can mitigate as much of that damage as possible and try to overcome the challenge. Now this one can be a little bit frustrating because the dice can hate you, but there's a lot of classes, a lot of different dungeons, and it's quite replayable. Definitely worth giving a go if you're a fan of dice-based games. Number 13 is Flashpoint Fire Rescue. Now this is a cooperative game that is a firefighting game, and each of your firefighters has different skills and abilities. And each one of them takes an action, and as you move around, the fire will react, it will expand, so you've got to keep the fire under control, but you've also got to find and rescue people from the building. So it's this constant back and forth battle between you and the fire. And a lot of the actions in this game are really logical. Doors hold back fires until they're destroyed. Fires spread faster when there's more fire around. And flame-ups can happen quite dramatically and quite quickly. One of the cool things about the PC version is it comes with a hell of a lot more maps than you get in the actual game. So in the base game, you only get 2 maps. It's a double-sided board. In this one, there's about a dozen. So anyway, this is a really good game if you're a fan of that pandemic-style cooperative team play sort of game. Number 12 is Star Realms, the deck building game that I reviewed some time ago. Now this is a really simple, straightforward deck building game, and the interface is really easy to use. So in Star Realms you're buying cards, you're adding them to your deck, but there's also set collection between the 4 different factions. So it's a game you can play against the AI or against online opponents. It's got a really short playtime on the computer, which takes care of all the shuffling and dealing of new cards, and it's just a really smoothly done PC version of the game. One of the problems is they will nickel and dime you for the extra content. So the core game is free, but all of the extras cost money. Still a really solid adaptation and a heck of a lot of fun to kill some time with. Next up we have Small World, or Small World 2 as it's known. This has an online play mode that you can join people and play online games with. Comes with a bunch of expansions as well that you can get to have extra races and abilities, but it also has a mode where you play against the AI. And the interface is really simple and straightforward. This is Small World. It's an area control game with variable player powers, where after a while you will need to send your race into decline in order to pick a new race that comes in and sweeps over where the old ones have been. The AI is pretty good in this game and does tend to score quite well, so it's actually not a bad one if you just want to play solo. And one thing I really like about the Small World PC game is that it's really quick. You can play through a game in next to no time, and you're not waiting around for the AI to make long, lengthy decisions. It's really rapid and yet still challenging, so a lot of fun in this one. Next up is Race for the Galaxy, which also has an online mode you can play, or you can play against the AI. You can play against a single AI opponent, or you can play against a bunch of them. And this is a really solid adaptation of Race for the Galaxy as an app. The controls are all intuitive. The AI is not the smartest. Even the hard AI isn't that great. But with 3 of them one of them will eventually luck into challenging you. The interface is really easy to use, and the game's all quite intuitive, and it plays, again, very, very quickly. So you can take as much time as you want to make your decisions when playing against the AI, but you're not waiting around for them to get done. A really solid adaptation of the game, and you can also pick up the expansions as well and add those in as you see fit. Number 9 is Raiders of the North Sea, and this is one of the nicer looking board game adaptations I've seen, because it captures the art and feeling of Raiders of the North Sea really well, while not just being the board game on the board. All the art and styling is there, but it's got a couple of little quirks that I really like. And one of the main ones is when you take a raid action, your little longboat actually rides out there and starts blowing stuff up. And there's something like quite satisfying about that. It's like they went the extra mile to go, yeah, let's not just make this a version of the board game. Let's make this the PC game version of the board game. And all of the good Raiders gameplay is there. The place one worker, take one worker mechanic, building up to do raids in order to get victory points. And the AI is really good in this game. I lost my first 2 games against them and squeaked by in my third, and it's been consistently difficult to dominate the AI, especially on hard. So yeah, this is, I think, one of the better looking board game adaptations that takes all the core gameplay of the board game, makes it immediately recognizable, but acknowledges that it's on a PC, and that there's some things you can do on a PC to make the game easier to look at and more fun to play. Number 8 isn't a board game. It is, but it isn't. There is no analog version of Tharsis. And Tharsis is a dice placement game very similar to Elder Sign, where there are calamitous events happening each round that you have to, as a team, solve in order to make it to Mars. So your explorer ship's on the way to Mars and a disaster happens. Several of the crew are killed, and things are catching fire and exploding all over the show. Each of the different locations has different abilities you can use in the room, and there are various risks when you take each challenge. In this case, if you roll 1, 3s or 5s, you'll take an injury. There's also research you can do to get special upgrades and powers, food you have to manage, events you have to manage, and each of the characters has their own unique strengths and weakness. And you have to survive a number of turns in order to get to Mars and then finally get into the escape pod. Also, the game includes cannibalism, but a little bit of a spoiler, you can't get the best result if you commit cannibalism. Anyway, Tharsis is a really good dice manipulation game. It's a lot of fun, it's incredibly challenging, and if you have played Elder Sign, a lot of this will be really intuitive to you. I'd really like them to make a physical board game of this at some point. I think it would be legitimately fun as a group. Number 7 is Lords of Waterdeep, which has an online mode you can play against people with, as well as an AI opponent, plus the 2 expansions that you can include or not include if you want. I've included Undermountain in this game. If you haven't played Lords of Waterdeep, it's a worker placement game where there are a bunch of unique places on the board, and more emerge as you build buildings throughout the game. And the goal is to collect certain numbers of cubes in order to complete missions which give you bonuses of more cubes, more resources, or more money. And there's a lot of intrigue cards and other little variable things you can do in the game. There is a lot of replayability in Lords of Waterdeep, and this app is really well done. The AI is not bad, but it does have a tendency to ignore its own special abilities and just play whatever quests they want. So you normally will beat them if you focus on your goals a bit stronger than they do. But if you're looking for a good worker placement game that has a really good board game adaptation on Steam, you can't really go past Lords of Waterdeep. It's really solid. Everything from the board game is here. It's intuitive. It looks and feels like the board game. And if you haven't played Lords of Waterdeep, you can just pick this up and play. It's a pretty straightforward game, and there won't be too many things that will surprise an experienced board gamer. You have workers, you place them in a space, it shows you what you get. You're trying to complete goals. All pretty straightforward, but still a hell of a lot of fun. I've spent way too much time playing Lords of Waterdeep. Number 6 is possibly the best game if you want to play a lot online, and that is Blood Bowl. There are so many Blood Bowl leagues out there, and there's usually one you can join online. And if not, you can host your own Blood Bowl league and invite your friends if they have the game. So as you saw there are thousands of leagues available at this time. Now, of course, finding a good one in there, that's another story. And if you haven't played Blood Bowl before, it's a pretty unforgiving game, but it is also kind of cool. There are a bunch of different teams. Each of them has their own strengths and weaknesses. Some of them are even really bad. Like, this is a game where not all teams are equal, and that's by design. So something like the Goblin or Halfling teams, they're just not up to snuff, especially the Ogre team, compared to, say, the Orcs or the Chaos teams. And the gameplay is a faithful adaptation of the board game. You got two teams going head-to-head in a 16-turn game of fantasy football. The goal is to score as many touchdowns as possible, whilst murdering as many of your opponents as you can. The game also features a lot of silly commentary.
He's going to sleep, and maybe we will see him on the pitch later.
As well as some fun animations. But at its core, it's a genuine and true adaptation of the board game, with all the strengths and weaknesses of that board game. So if you really hated Blood Bowl, the PC version isn't going to save the game for you. Oh, and playing against the AI can be fun to kill some time, but the AI is notoriously dumb. Like, the AI in Blood Bowl is one of the worst in board gaming. If it wasn't for the online play, I wouldn't recommend this anywhere near as highly as I do. Number 5 is the board game app I've played the most, and that's Terraforming Mars. I've played hundreds of damn games of this thing, but I mostly play the solo mode. And the reason for that was when it came out, the multiplayer mode was a bit terrible. Just a little bit terrible. It dropped people all the time. I understand a lot of that's fixed now, but I've gotten to the habit of primarily playing the solo mode. So you can play online, you can play with friends, you can play against AI opponents, or you can just do the straight solo mode, which is Terraforming Mars in 14 turns. And that's kind of my happy place, is the solo mode 14-turn terraforming game. And the reason for that is this is my evening unwind game. This is what I do when it's about 11 o'clock at night and I just want to park my brain and unwind before I go to bed. I'll play a game, maybe two, of Terraforming Mars. And that's how you get up to 400 plays or more. You play a game every night. And as much as I love this game, it does have some weaknesses. There isn't an undo button. So once you've made a decision, even if it's a bad decision, you're stuck with it. And the second one is it only has the core game. There are no expansions here. The developer who was making the game went out of business and someone else had to take it over. So development on this game hasn't been as strong as it could be. But I love Terraforming Mars. I love the game. I love to be able to play it solo. And from my limited experience of the online mode recently, it seems to be working a lot better. Number 4 is Through the Ages, and this is a game I hate playing in person. I absolutely refuse to play Through the Ages again on the tabletop. It just takes way too long for what it is. The app, however, is absolutely fantastic. All of the fiddly bookkeeping that drags down Through the Ages in person, with people moving their little cubes around, taking forever, it's all gone in Through the Ages. And not only that, Through the Ages has challenge modes. It has different ways of playing. It has online play. It has play against AI opponents that are quite good, especially the hard AIs, and especially on levels where they give them advantages. You have to be pretty damn good at Through the Ages to beat all of the challenges in this game. And it also has a really good tutorial. So even if you haven't played Through the Ages before, you can pick up what is one of the more complex games out there and learn it via the PC version. In fact, it's probably easier to learn it here than it is in person. So yeah, if you are jonesing for some heavy Euro gameplay, you need some Vlada, get Through the Ages the app. It's really good. And remember, I don't like playing this game in person, but I really like playing the app. Number 3 is the PC version of the very first game I really got into, and that was back in 1987, and it's Battletech. Battletech was my first board gaming love. And looking back, it's kind of bizarre that a 10-year-old was able to figure out this rather complex game. Not only that, teach it to other kids. And finally, we have a Battletech game now on the PC that is genuinely good and genuinely fun to play. You can customize mechs to your heart's desire. Once you've unlocked them and once you've got the parts and stuff you need. So you start off scrappy with small mechs, but you build up to big, more powerful ones. But they're not always the most useful. So some missions you'll need speed, and other missions you'll just need brute force. And in this scenario, I've gone for brute force against a much weaker opponent. So I'm striding around with my Atlas and Awesome, just leveling things. There's a lot of game here. There's a good campaign, and then there's an open mode where you just expand your mercenary company and keep doing missions. You can easily sink 100 or more hours on Battletech if you get into it. But the caveat for that is you have to be into the sort of hex-based combat that Battletech represents. And you have to buy into the idea of obtaining salvage to get better mechs, to go out and do different fights. Because at its core, 90% of this game is mech on mech fights. And if you don't enjoy that, there's not a lot to the game after that. I really do enjoy that. So as a consequence, I've played 160 hours of this. So if you're looking for a great game to fill a lot of hours and you like miniature war games, definitely check out Battletech. Number 2, everything I said about Through the Ages being a better version of a board game I don't like playing in person also applies to Sentinels of the Multiverse, but more so. Sentinels is a bear of a game in person. There's so much to keep track of, so many tokens, so many powers, so many bits of timing that it can just get overwhelming, especially some of the later stuff and especially Oblivion mode. Sentinels of the Multiverse, the PC game, does all of that bookkeeping for you and reduces Sentinels down to its essence, which is really specialized superhero decks for each player. They have their own strengths and weaknesses, using those strengths and weaknesses to combine into a team to fight against a unique villain in a unique location, and how you mix and match all of those things. There are so many heroes, so many villains, and so many environments that you can tweak and change if you have all of the expansions for this. So yeah, if you've got lots of time to burn, you want a game that's got a lot of challenge and a lot of variety, you can do a hell of a lot worse than the Sentinels of the Multiverse PC game. There really is a lot of content here. And last, and certainly not least, we come to Slay the Spire. This is a game with no analog comparison. But what it is a deck builder. And it's a really clever deck builder. It's a deck building dungeon crawler. After each fight, you can add a card to your deck and get upgrades. So as you progress through the Spire, your deck evolves, the combinations within it evolve. And it's really compelling. After each fight, you're like, oh cool, I've got a new toy to play with. Who's next? You open up a treasure chest and you get a relic and you're like, cool, that's awesome, that makes me even better. Who's next? And you keep moving up the Spire of increasingly difficult fights. And the boss fights are especially tough. And this game is merciless as well, and will present you challenge after challenge after challenge. And there's 4 unique classes, and they're not just slightly different powers. They have completely different playstyles. The one I'm using in my examples is the Defect, and they're all about creating these orbs above them that you can discharge for various bonuses. The other classes don't have those orbs at all. They have completely different mechanics. And while this isn't a PC adaptation of an existing board game, if you like deck building, if you enjoy card manipulation, if you liked Magic the Gathering, any of those sort of card-based games, or even engine builders, there'll be something you'll like within Slay the Spire. And for me, this game represents taking the lessons of board game design and applying them to an environment where you're not limited by physical apparatus, because the variety of cards you can get is massive. But the combat is more complex than would be manageable in a board game. It has that extra depth you can only get when the computer is doing a bunch of calculations for you, unless you want to spend hours and hours and hours playing. And a game of Slay the Spire, from the ground to the Spire, can take you over an hour. So if you are looking for something to kill a lot of hours with, and you like deck building, or you like LCGs and CCGs, absolutely check out Slay the Spire. Well, that's my list of 20 board games on Steam that I think are pretty damn good. These are not the only board games on Steam I've played a heck of a lot more, but these are the 20 I thought were worth mentioning. Are there any I missed that you think are really great? Do you have any experiences with these games that you disagree with me about? If you do, let me know in the comments. And a reminder that there will be a link to the Tabletop Simulator advice in the pinned comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, support us on Patreon, hit the notification button, and check out our website.